Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sunset TV. I'm Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. As one of the world's fastest growing major economies, India's growth numbers consistently make headlines. So whether it is the GDP projections, the key drivers of our growth, or the broader optimism around India's economic trajectory, we keep hearing and reading about them almost every day. But behind the news and the numbers lies one fundamental question, which is how well do they actually capture the reality of today's economy? And that question becomes even more relevant when we consider how much India has changed and transformed over the past decade. From the rapid rise of digital platforms and gig work, to greater formalization through reforms like the GST, to shifting consumption patterns and evolving investment behavior, the structure of the Indian economy today is very different from what it was 10 years ago. So it is in this context that the revision of the GDP base year from 2011-12 to 2022-23 becomes particularly significant. The revised series, which was released earlier this year by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, brings with it improvements in the data sources, the updated classifications, and important methodological refinements aligned with the global standards. But this is not just a technical exercise. It has a direct bearing on how we read the growth numbers, how the policies are then shaped, and how India's economic story is understood both domestically and globally. In Perspective today, we are going to revisit this important exercise. We are going to explore questions like, does the new GDP series give us a more clearer and more complete picture of the economy? And also, what does it mean for the way we interpret India's growth going forward, especially towards our Viksit Bharat vision of 2047? So this is a discussion that we had been meaning to bring before you for quite some time. And I'm glad that today we have with us two eminent experts who've been closely associated with this domain and who will help us provide the answers of these questions. I'm delighted to welcome in the studio today Mr. Siddhartha Kundu. He is ADG, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. And next to him is Dr. Bishwanath Goldar. He is Chairman, Advisory Committee on National Account Statistics. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking our time, joining us for this discussion. Welcome to the program. To begin with you, Mr. Kundu, the basic question, and for our viewers to understand, I assume that many of us and our viewers believe that GDP base year revision is more of a technical exercise. So help us understand first the significance of the base year revision and why it is not just a statistical update today in context of how India is growing. Despite the headwinds, we continue to remain the largest growing economy, one of the fastest growing major economies, in fact. So does it fundamentally change the way that we look at India's growth story?
Actually, when we talk about GDP, it is the actually value of output produced by an economy in simple language. Now, our objective is not only to value the output, but also how it is growing. Now, for measuring the growth, we need to have certain base year, certain year, reference year, we can say, with which we can compare that whether it is growing or it is stagnant or whatever. Now, when the base year is chosen, always it is thought that it should be a normal year, it should not be any fluctuating as such, so that if I am taking a year where there is deceleration, then in the next years it will be showing very high growth. And on the other hand, if it is peak year, then there will be certain issues. So a normal year we always take, and as a result of that 11-12 was earlier base year was chosen, not 10-11 or 9-10, because that time there was a problem of recession and other things in the world economy. Right. Now, after 11-12, we had almost 10 years over. In between, we thought that there may be 18-19 or 19-20 we could have made. But unfortunately, there were COVID, there were certain issues with regard to economy, and we did not have the normal year as such. And as a result, ultimately, the ACNAS, whose chairman is Sir, has decided that 22-23 would be the reference year or base year for the next revision. Now, why we do that base revision? Because we have to capture the economic structure that by 10, 11, 12 and this 22, 23, so many things have taken place in the economy. Economic structural changes have happened. So we want to capture that. And normally what happens, methodology and data source,
That's right.
we fix at the time of base year. When it is fixed, then that methodology and data source is to continue till next base year is revised. So for example, 22-23 is our new base year. We will continue till after say 5 or 7 years the base year will be revised. Till that time the same methodology will continue, and what we are following previously, that methodology and data were decided at the time of 11-12. So in this process we are getting chance to improve the methodology. Every methodology will provide some estimate of GDP, but which methodology is better, that is decided through the availability of the data source. Given the data source, we choose the best methodology available during that time, and that is to continue so that we can measure the actual change. Actually, in GDP, it is the valuation of the output. Are you getting? It is the valuation of output. So it has a price effect when we value. So eliminating the price effect, we always construct. One is at current prices or nominal value of GDP. Another is real value. So for real value, we have to have a base year, and base year means the reference year, with which we are comparing to how the output growth is there, how the output is growing, that real growth rate, growth rate in real terms, that shows the actual growth rate.
Okay, so that was about the need, the significance and the methodology that's adapted for base year revisions. Professor, now help us understand how does it impact or change the understanding of, say, a common man of the Indian economy. It's important, that is something that Dr. Kundu has explained, but how should, for somebody like me, who has no background in understanding why this exercise takes place and the importance of it. Now Mr. Kundu has given us an overview of why it's important to keep doing such exercises at regular periods of time. But how does it impact my understanding of how our economy is growing?
Yeah, there are, one is, as we mentioned in the beginning, there are changes in the structure, which means shares of different sectors of the economy in the overall GDP.
Right.
So over time that changes. A common man now looking at the data can understand that manufacturing sector share is growing, or agriculture sector is growing, or which sector has come to what level. That is one. Okay. But the other thing is, from the common man's point of view, what this new series that has done is, it has made the numbers more accurate, because over time, any series it starts, over time its accuracy keeps falling, slightly it gets falling. So it, from time to time, we have to change the base so that we can bring in more data, we can make methodological improvements. So today the most important thing to my mind that has happened is, we are currently using a methodology that provides a very accurate estimate of the economy. Why this is important? We were till now saying that India is the fastest growing. Now with the accurate measurement, we are confirming India is indeed the fastest growing. That is one. Second is, 3 years data, if you think 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, in old data there are certain estimates. For example, for 23, 24, we had estimated the growth was 9.2. But now we recalculate and say, no, it was not so fast, it was only 7.2. But overall 3 years, we are still 7% plus. Another important thing is, manufacturing sector's growth, according to new numbers, is 11% plus, 3-year average. We never thought manufacturing is really growing that fast, but we are now realizing. So for the common man, it is the realization that the economy is growing fast and manufacturing is growing faster.
Since we are trying to understand the change, if I could also ask you to explain what have been some of the bigger structural changes which made this revision necessary and timely?
Now there are, of course, as I said, you see, there are several things. It's difficult to list entire thing, but most important thing of them is the formalization, that is relative certain sectors, the formal segment has gone and informal segment or informalization has gone down. That is one type of changes that is taking place. Second is within the agriculture sector, GVA, suddenly the agriculture sector, which was share was going down, it has now sort of growth has become faster, and this growth is coming from, instead of using diesel, shift is to electricity and to solar. Similarly, there is a fast growth in horticulture and animal husbandry. All these are important structural changes that is taking place, which are helping and which we need to take into account. And the other important thing is tech driven sectors, which means fintech, edutech, or other things, digital intermediary platforms, or many other things, or e-commerce. These sectors were there, they have grown over time. They have now come to occupy a very important place in the economy. We need therefore a change in the methodology so that we can better capture these dynamic sectors of the economy. GST is now encompassing such a large part of the economy. So far we are not using GST for GDP. Now we have started using. So these are the things changes. And another thing I should mention, that earlier when we were measuring growth, all goods and services were being measured at 2011-12 prices. So if you measure growth of today, 24-25 or 25-26, should you value the goods at 2011-12 prices? Obviously it's not perfect, because relative prices change over time. That is the reason from time to time we have to upgrade the series and measure. Now the new series is not measuring them at 11-12, measuring their 22-23 prices, so that the prices you use for measuring growth reflect the more current situation rather than the situation prevailing 11 or 12 years ago. This is the reason.
That's right. So you've explained how the revised series better captures the dynamic and the emerging sectors. Mr. Kundu, let me come back to you now to understand more about the process. We've spoken about the changes that necessitated it and the manner in which it's been done. You mentioned there have been improvements in the methodological framework. If you could walk us through some of the important changes, but most importantly the steps that make it more robust, because accuracy was spoken about. I recall when on February 27 it was announced, the key word was accuracy. Professor also mentioned that the aim is to have accurate understanding of the manner in which the economy is changing. So what are the steps that have been ensured to make it more accurate, more robust?
It is always questioned that the estimates we are giving, that should be reliable one.
That's true.
Okay. Now, in this base revision, what methodological improvements have been taken? So many. I will mention a few. Number one is that our main informal sector enterprises, that is household sector, we actually estimate through 5 institutional sector, and one of them is household sector. Others are essentially financial corporate, non-financial corporate, general government, and NPISH. So household sector plays a most important role, and here in household sector, earlier what was happening, we used to generate estimate from the PLFS data, periodic labor force survey and labor force data, and enterprise survey data. Using the GVA and labor worker population ratio, using those things is bit technical, we generate the household sector. But those surveys were done normally at a 5-year interval. So in between we are using certain indicator or growth rate, and we are generating, say 11-12 estimate was in the base period, on the basis of survey it is done. Then in between period we are estimating using certain indicator, because there were no survey. But now in 22-23 and after, we have annual survey of unincorporated sector enterprises and periodic labor force survey. So we are estimating each year without help of any indicator, and directly we are estimating the extent of contribution of household sector in the GDP. First, number one. Second is, there was a always question about the deflation. To arrive at the real value or constant price, we used to deflate. Earlier, besides except agriculture, in all other sectors, deflation was single deflation. That is, we are deflating both by output and input by the same price level, price of output. Now here in this base revision, we have done that double deflation for manufacturing. Besides agriculture is always there, in manufacturing also, that input by input price and output, value of output by output price. In that way, the double deflation is ensured. And for all other sector, we are using that extrapolation method and totally doing away with the single deflation. There was a criticism, and always United Nations, SNA and other IMF, etc., they always suggested that India should not do the single deflation. So we have this year, we have overcome that limitation.
Since you mentioned the United Nations SNA, let me also ask you a related question. How does India's base year revision align with the United Nations system of national accounts? But how does the revised series improve comparability with the other countries?
Yes. To start with, that earlier you might have known, might have seen that we were using that GDP at market price at factor cost, but 2008 onwards, rather to SNA 1993 and 2008 onwards, they suggested to come out with the GDP with the basic price, and we had started this with basic price, and all other international recommendations we are following since then and now also. And wherever the criticism was there, that discrepancy, actually in national accounting we generate estimate for both production approach as well as for expenditure approach. I mean, production approach means that what has been produced in the economy, and in expenditure approach means whatever has been produced, how they are spent, either it is in the form of private consumption or in the government consumption, or it is invested or export. And these expenditure approach estimate and production approach estimate, these two should be very close to each other, and the difference we call it statistical discrepancy. Now earlier, before this base revision, it was to the extent of about 2 to 3%, but always it is recommended that it should be less than 1%. Now we have made an achievement that we have integrated the supply use table framework, so that in supply use table framework we are trying to reconcile that whatever has been produced is spent, and in that way the discrepancy has been made almost zero. In base year it was 0, and in other years it is less than much less than 1%. Okay.
You know, especially at a time when global investors, the global institutions, Professor, are tracking India's growth story, this revision from the point of view of global credibility is undoubtedly a very important and significant step. But does aligning with international standards, does improving transparency strengthen the investor confidence in India, and especially in context of our growth? We have set certain ambitious goals for ourselves. So when we take steps like these, what does it mean for the investor confidence, both domestically and internationally? And in terms of our own growth story, in terms of our credibility, how significant is it?
No, surely, as I said right in the beginning, I think two key words are accuracy, reliability. The third key word is transparency. This time the base revision has been long process with stakeholder fully involved in this process. And right from the beginning, various working papers or discussion papers and meetings, it has been unlike, because I have been associated with this sort of base revision also in 2 previous occasions. But this one, I must say, is very different, because so much discussion and involvement of the stakeholders into the process is unique, and the amount of material that has been made available to the public, all the subcommittees which have worked and the reports have been made public, and one can, the idea was, let there not be criticism after we make out the estimates. Let there be suggestions, criticism before we do our calculations, and if there is some suggestion which we can incorporate, surely we will incorporate. This is one. So from the point of view of transparency, I think we are doing this time excellent. That is what I can say. I hope, and since many of the basic weaknesses which have been from time and again pointed out to us, for example, single deflation, or the problem that unorganized sector or informal sector out, we don't have a good estimates, or we are moving the estimate by some indicator. Each of these problems, this round, we have solved. I am not saying everything 100% we have not been able to solve, but we have come very close. So from that point of view, we have achieved considerable amount of, I think, reliability on the estimates we are generating, and even with all that, our estimates are showing high growth. From the point of view of international investors, I think there should be a lot of confidence in.
Your point on stakeholders takes me to the next question, which is about how significant is this for improving the accuracy and comparability of GSDP across the states. If we try and look at the states and data quality, the revision, because we understand it will eventually, to both of you in fact, because it's going to feed into the state level estimates, how significant is it in that context? If you could also explain, and then we'll proceed.
Sir, yes. Actually, state GVA is, we are providing the help to the state and do the consultative works of the state. They come out with the estimate. However, we provide all the necessary guidance, and to produce certain thing, say All India GVA is X, and Delhi GVA, Delhi NCT's GVA is a part of that. That what should be that part of X, that we generate and we share with them for different sectors, and they also update this information with their level of data, and in that way it is more or less unless and until states are satisfied and central is satisfied, this data is not disseminated. And till now, in 11-12 base year, the data is uploaded in our website, and we have very recently organized that consultative workshop with the state government very recently in April, first week, 7th to 8th to 10th of this April month of April, and there we have discussed, and all the states have participated, that with the new base, because the exercise what we have carried out is for all India, and now they will follow the same procedure to come out with the estimate, so that results can be comparable with center and state, and all of them are coming out. We have prepared the manual, we have shared with them, and draft manual have been prepared, and final manual will be shared very soon, because some states have certain data related issues, so those are addressed. And essentially at current price, no issue, we are providing, but at constant price in many states there is not corresponding price index is not available, so those issues we are addressing.
Let me tweak the question to you, Professor. Yes, you can add, but let me also add another part to that question, because the users also include the policymakers and the researchers, also the media. So what steps are you taking to ensure that the revised series is used and interpreted in the correct manner? And as you said, it's quite different from the earlier exercises. So to ensure that the impact and the vision with which it's been done, it is reported and used accurately. So how are we proceeding towards that?
Well, let me say something about the states.
Yes, please.
You see, estimating state GDP, there are two processes. One is a bottom-up approach, like agriculture, where it is first estimated at state level and then added up to the nation. But there are other sectors where first all India estimate is made and then it's broken down to states. So in certain sectors, we had some data so that it can easily be broken down to states. For example, manufacturing. We had annual survey of industries. Using that, we could break down the all India number. The all India number comes from the corporate data. That is broken. But in services, we had a big difficulty that there is no corresponding annual survey of services. But this problem is now getting solved with the help of GST, because in GST we are able to see the flows from each state to each state. So using now this new data, we are able to make a much better estimate of the flows of goods and services across states, and therefore break up the all India GV estimate for any sector into the state. So that way the state level estimates are going to be better. I must add that this round there have been various subcommittees have worked. State, there is a separate subcommittee. They have put their mind to this question and what are the problems, what needs to be solved. I am in the chairing the ACNIS, where all these things come and then we take a final call. But there is a subcommittee dealing with the states. I think they have a good work and they have come up with some excellent suggestions as to what needs to be done, and we are hoping that will be much better estimate. Now coming to your question about how we can make these estimates much better for the interpretation, as I said, since so much documentation is being done, it becomes much easier for the people to understand. And I also notice that nowadays among the research articles I see, there is appreciation of the new numbers. We feel very happy because this much appreciation was not there in the previous round.
It's because it's perhaps also because the manner of outreach has changed.
And another thing I would like to mention in this respect, that for the users, they are seeing our number, but how these numbers have been arrived at, some of them have doubt. They are referring to our previous manuals, etc., that this process might have been followed as per that previous manual. Now we have decided that by July or August we will come out with the quote unquote sources and methods. We call sources and methods.
A separate document will
separate
come.
Document for the user, where all the estimates,
every
how
detail
it is decided, how it is done, everything will be discussed in great detail. It will be about 300-400 pages document.
I think that we are discussing it. I'm sure there are people who are taking keen interest. It's also the interest that's developed. People now want to be more aware of how things are happening and how such exercises are taking place. So I'm going to wrap up the conversation with one forward-looking question to you, Mr. Kundu. As we move forward towards our 2047 vision, we understand that we're going to become a more and more large, but also a more complex economy. What needs to be done to strengthen our statistical systems going forward? And as we said, now there is growing awareness. Now people want to understand why things are taking place, what's the need, what's the objective, what's the purpose, what's going to be the impact largely. So while you've already said, you've listed out the steps that you plan to take in terms of enhancing that outreach, but it's going to be a continuous process of strengthening our systems. So what is the next plan of action?
Actually, Sir has already mentioned that for manufacturing sector, we have ASI or something for state-wise allocation. Our essential objective should be bottom-up approach. From each state will come out with their estimate, and that will be the total estimate. Now, ASI is there for manufacturing sector. For unorganized household sector, we have the unorganized sector survey and PLFS. For corporate sector, we have requested the GSTN authority to provide that GSTN ID wise, where the state name is also included, so that we can distribute the corporate sector's contribution state wise. That we have also included. But where the main problem was there, and till now we have, that is the service sector, as Sir has mentioned already. Now for service sector, MoSPI has started conducting that annual survey of incorporated service sector enterprises. So that survey will be a very big ingredient for our general GDP. And now another thing I would like to mention here, that GDP, till now we are following the SNA, System of National Accounting. Now latest System of National Accounting is SNA 2025, which will be implemented by every country by 2030. So there our target is not only GDP estimate, but it is going beyond GDP, say well-being, measurement of well-being they have included in their agenda. So for that, income survey, income data is required, inequality is required, valuation of digital asset is required, data as an asset has been recognized. So many new things have been come. Climate, valuation of climate is there,
Perhaps
environment.
we will
and
sit for another round of interaction
so many
to
things
understand what those
just
newer
one
methods
sentence,
are.
In one sentence, let me complete. That so many new things have come, and those things will be incorporated in our next agenda. Under SHARE, there is ACNAS, he is the chairman of ACNAS, and there is a committee who is subcommittee who is looking after that SNA 2025 update, and those things we are started doing these things.
So we do hope that when you incorporate those newer methods, we are able to find time and sit for another round of conversation to understand them better. But for now, time allows us to take up only that much on the discussion today. Thank you once again to both of you for joining in and explaining to us the importance of the base year revision, but also the impact that it will have on India's growth story. Because what's important is, and for all of us to understand, is that it's not just about growth, it's about measuring the growth accurately, because the better measurements will lead to better decisions, and better decisions will ensure that we are not just growing but growing sustainably. That's what our motto is, and that's what our policies are driven by. So with that, we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of Perspective. Thank you once again to both our guests, and to you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well.
To watch more programs of Sunset TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.